Hey guys, tonight we are going to drift through the shadows of the American Civil War into a world of secrets kept not in fortified bunkers, but in sewing baskets and behind ballroom fans. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in a parlor, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and old paper. Outside, the world is tearing itself apart, but inside, all you can hear is the gentle rustle of silk and the soft murmur of gossip. This is the world we're visiting. And honestly, between the corsets that could crack a rib and the complete absence of antibiotics, you probably wouldn't last a week. But tonight, you don't have to. You just have to listen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where you're all listening from, so feel free to drop your city and the time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the silence. It's a different kind of quiet than you're used to. Not the absence of noise, but a thick, layered quiet made of unspoken rules. Your world in the year 1860 is a carefully constructed dollhouse, and you are one of its most prized inhabitants. The air itself feels different, heavy with the smell of coal smoke from a distant train and the faint, sweet perfume of lilac water on your wrists. You sit in a straight-back chair, not because you want to, but because the tightly laced corset around your torso gives you no other choice. It's a cage of whalebone and canvas, a constant, unyielding pressure that dictates how you breathe, how you move, how you exist. This isn't just a piece of clothing, it's a metaphor for your life. Your domain is the home. The world outside, the world of politics, of commerce, of war, that is the man's sphere. Yours is the domestic sphere, a realm of children, charity, and church. This idea, known as the cult of domesticity, is the bedrock of your society. It holds that women are the moral compass, the gentle, pious, and submissive guardians of family life. You are seen as creatures of delicate feeling, too pure and fragile to comprehend the sordid business of statecraft or the brutal calculus of battle. Your opinions on such matters are considered, well, they aren't really considered at all. You are a decoration, a comfort, a symbol of everything the men are supposedly fighting for. And in this universal underestimation lies your greatest, most secret power. Nobody is watching you. Not really. They see the dress, the bonnet, the demurely folded hands. They don't see the mind working behind the placid expression. They don't see the observer. The details of your daily life are a slow, predictable rhythm. You oversee the household staff, plan the menus, and engage in the endless, intricate ritual of social calls. This involves leaving small, rectangular calling cards at the homes of your acquaintances, each visit governed by a dizzying array of unwritten rules. You might spend an entire afternoon just embroidering a single flower onto a handkerchief. It's a life of profound, mind-numbing boredom, punctuated by the rustle of newspapers brought home by your husband or father. But you learn to listen. You learn to piece together the world from fragments of conversation overheard in the drawing room, from the worried glances exchanged between men who think you are only focused on serving the tea. Your clothing, which so perfectly represents your confinement, also offers an absurd amount of concealment. You are wearing, at this moment, a chemise, drawers, the corset, a corset cover, multiple petticoats for warmth and modesty, and then the main event, the crinoline. This giant, bell-shaped cage of steel hoops creates the fashionable silhouette of the era, holding your skirts out in a massive circle around you. It's cumbersome and frankly a bit of a fire hazard, but it's also a personal mobile storage unit. You could hide a Thanksgiving turkey under there and no one would be the wiser. A small stack of letters? A pistol? A coded message tucked into a garter? Child's play. Your appearance is your camouflage. You are a ghost in your own life, floating through rooms, present but unseen. Your true thoughts and abilities tucked away as neatly as a note in the lining of a glove. As whispers of secession turn to shouts and the country begins to fracture, the men around you speak in hushed, urgent tones of strategy, of troop movements, of loyalty and treason. They lower their voices when you enter the room, not because you might understand, but because it is considered improper to trouble your delicate sensibilities with such ugly matters. It's almost funny. Little do they know, this very act of exclusion is creating the perfect spy. Historians still argue whether the war fundamentally shattered the cult of domesticity or merely put a temporary crack in its foundation. But what is certain is that for a select group of women, the call to war wouldn't be a call to arms, but a call to listen, to watch, and to use the very cage they lived in as their most effective weapon. The first cannons will soon fire on Fort Sumter, and the shock waves will rattle the windows of your dollhouse. The world is about to change forever, and you, the quiet, overlooked woman in the corner, will have to decide which side you're on and what you're willing to do in secret to help it win. The silence you've lived in is about to become your greatest asset. The news arrives not as a clean digital notification, but as a chaotic wave of sound and emotion that crashes against the walls of your quiet home. It's the frantic ringing of church bells at an unscheduled hour, the sound of men shouting in the street, the sudden sharp slam of a neighbor's door. War. The word itself feels alien in the delicate space of your parlor. It's a man's word, full of smoke and iron, and it has no place near your embroidered linens. But it's here now, and the tremors of that first battle at Fort Sumter have shaken your dollhouse to its foundations. The choice that was once a distant intellectual debate is now a raw, immediate reality. You must choose a side. For many women like you, the choice is simple, almost instinctual. It's a fierce, unthinking loyalty to the soil under your feet. If you are in the South, it is a devotion to your state, a defense of your home against what you see as an invading force. They call it the cause, and it's spoken of with the same hushed reverence as a prayer. If you are in the North, it is an equally powerful belief in the Union, the conviction that the great American experiment must be preserved at all costs. This patriotism is a fire fanned by sermons, songs, and the sight of new flags being stitched together in frantic sewing circles. It's a powerful current that pulls you along, making inaction feel like the deepest kind of betrayal. You see the young men of your town marching off, their faces scrubbed and earnest, and a feeling swells in your chest, a desperate need to do something, to contribute more than just bandages and prayers. But for some, the motivation is sharper, colder, and far more personal. Perhaps the war is not just a political disagreement for you. Perhaps it is a moral crusade. You may be an abolitionist, someone who has long believed that the institution of slavery is a cancer on the soul of the nation. For you, the Union blue is not just the color of a flag, it is the color of liberation. This conviction gives your purpose a righteous edge. You aren't just fighting for a country, you're fighting for human freedom. This is the sacred fire that motivated women like Harriet Tubman, who, after guiding so many to freedom on the Underground Railroad, would go on to serve the Union as a scout and a spy, her skills in stealth and navigation proving invaluable. Or perhaps your motivation is born from something much darker. A few months into the fighting, a letter arrives, its edges smudged with dirt and sealed with black wax. You open it with trembling fingers. Your brother, your cousin, perhaps even your husband is gone. A name on a long list of casualties from a battle whose name you can barely pronounce. Grief is a hollow, aching thing. But sometimes in the dark, quiet hours, that grief begins to curdle into a cold, hard rage. Your desire to help your side is no longer just patriotic, it's personal. You want revenge. You want the enemy to feel even a fraction of the pain that now lives inside you, and this burning need makes you willing to take risks that would have terrified the woman you were just a year ago. Let's be practical, though. Not every decision is forged in the crucible of ideology or grief. Sometimes it's about survival. Remember the restrictive world you live in? A woman of your station has almost no way to earn a living. With your husband away at war, or worse, gone for good, the money may be running out. And here we find a quiet, often overlooked motivation: cold, hard cash. Intelligence agencies, like the one run by the Union's Alan Pinkerton, had budgets. They paid their agents. It's a fact often glossed over in favor of more romantic narratives. But for a woman facing destitution, the prospect of payment for information could be a powerful incentive. Being a spy wasn't just a way to serve your country. For some, it was a job, a way to keep a roof over your head. And honestly, being paid to uncover state secrets sounds a lot more sustainable than winning the prize money at the county bake-off. Historians still debate the primary driver for many female spies. Was it pure ideological conviction? Or did the newfound agency and excitement of the work itself become a powerful motivation? Think about it. You've spent your entire life constrained by that corset, your days dictated by a tedious cycle of domestic duties. The war, for all its horror, is a crack in the wall of your cage. The idea of having a secret, a purpose that is yours and yours alone, is intoxicating. It's a chance to use your mind, your wits, your courage, qualities you've been taught to suppress. The thrill of outsmarting the powerful men who have always underestimated you. That could be a reason all on its own. It's a significant upgrade from the previous year's excitement, which probably peaked when you managed to get the last bolt of French silk at the dry goods store. Whatever the reason, patriotism, principle, payment, or pure audacity, you've made your choice. You've decided to turn your invisibility into a weapon. Now you just have to find a way to get started. So you have your purpose. It's a small, hard kernel of conviction sitting in the center of your chest. But what now? You can't exactly enroll in an espionage academy. There are no training manuals, no sleek gadgets delivered in the dead of night. Your induction into the secret world is a quiet, solitary affair. It begins with you standing in the middle of your own home, looking at it not as a place of comfort, but as an arsenal of possibility. The tools of your new trade are not what you might expect. They are humble, domestic, and already in your possession. Your greatest weapon, you soon realize, is the profound ordinariness of your life. Your first lesson is in the art of secret writing. You sit at your delicate wooden writing desk, the kind normally used for corresponding with relatives about weddings and illnesses. On the surface, your letters must remain perfectly banal. You write about the weather, a sick child, the disappointing quality of the latest shipment of flour. But between the lines, or hidden within the words themselves, another message travels. You learn about ciphers, not the complex mathematical enigmas of modern cryptography, but something far simpler and more elegant. A popular method is the book cipher. You and your contact agree on a single book, often the Bible, as it's in nearly every household, and a message is encoded as a series of numbers. A sequence like 119.84 might mean Psalm 119 verse 8, the fourth word. To an intercepting army official, it's just a list of numbers, probably a household accounts. To your contact, it's a clear message. The very book that represents piety and moral uprightness becomes a dictionary for treason. But paper is risky. It can be found, read, and used as evidence. The most ingenious methods involve making the message itself disappear into the fabric of daily life. This is where your pantry becomes a supply closet for spycraft. Consider the humble egg. You take a pin and make a tiny hole at each end, carefully blowing out the yolk and white until the shell is empty. Then you write your intelligence on a whisper-thin piece of paper, roll it tighter than a watch spring, and painstakingly thread it through one of the holes. A little dab of melted alum or white wax seals the holes, and the egg is placed back in a basket with a dozen others. You, a woman taking fresh eggs to a relative or selling them at market, are now a courier of state secrets. It's the perfect crime. Who would ever think to crack open every egg in your basket? It's a bit of a shame, of course. Your mental grocery list now has to distinguish between eggs for your morning breakfast and eggs for the cause. The true genius of this era's espionage, however, lies in the tools of femininity themselves. Your sewing basket is a treasure trove. A spool of thread can be unwound, a message wrapped around the core, and the thread carefully rewound over it. A specific quilt pattern, with its squares of calico and cotton, can be a map. And then there is knitting. The rhythmic click-clack of your needles is one of the most common, comforting sounds of the 19th century home. You are knitting socks for a soldier at the front, a patriotic wifely duty. But the pattern is a code. A series of knit stitches followed by a purl stitch could represent the dots and dashes of Morse code. A knot tied at a certain point could signify a number. Historians still debate how widespread these highly specialized techniques actually were, versus the much more common and perhaps more effective method of simply writing a detailed letter and relying on a trusted courier's ability to hide it well. But the stories persist, and the image of a woman calmly knitting a report on enemy fortifications into a scarf is just too good to ignore. It's the ultimate deadpan delivery. These socks? Oh, they're just to keep my nephew warm. Also, they detail the precise location of the enemy's ammunition depot. Even your knowledge of chemistry, basic as it may be, comes into play. You learn to create invisible ink. There are no fancy chemicals involved. You use the juice of a lemon or milk or even the liquid from an onion, writing your message between the lines of a normal-looking letter. Once it dries, it vanishes completely. The recipient just needs to gently heat the paper over a candle flame, and your words will reappear, browning into legibility. It's a simple trick, but astonishingly effective. As you sit there painting a secret message onto paper with a clean brush dipped in milk, you have to smile. It's all so wonderfully, beautifully, deceptively simple. All the things that defined your small world, baking, sewing, writing letters, have now become the very things that might help to change the larger one. You just hope you can remember which batch of cookies has the note in it. It would be terribly awkward if you accidentally sent the battle plans to your Aunt Mildred. Now that you have your humble toolkit, you must leave the relative safety of your home and venture out into a world at war. This is where your true performance begins, and your costume is the most crucial part of the deception. The act of getting dressed, once a simple daily ritual, is now a strategic preparation for a mission. Each layer of clothing you put on is a layer of camouflage, a component of the character you are about to play, the harmless 19th century woman. You start with the base layers, the chemise and drawers, and then comes the familiar, unyielding embrace of your corset. But today, the pressure feels different, not just restrictive, but protective, like armor. Over this, you add petticoat after petticoat, their starchy rustle a soft symphony of concealment. Finally, you step into the main piece of your architecture, the giant steel hoop crinoline we talked about before. As the massive skirt settles around you, creating that fashionable bell shape, you are no longer just a woman, you are a walking secret compartment. Any documents, maps, or small packets of medicine can be tied with ribbons to the inner hoops of the cage, where they will sway gently, completely invisible as you walk. Your travel preparations now involve a mental checklist that includes both clean handkerchiefs and sensitive intelligence reports, and it is terribly important not to get the two mixed up. Your entire ensemble is designed to project an image of delicate, non-threatening femininity. This is the very essence of your cover. Society's belief in the cult of true womanhood, the idea that you are inherently pious, pure, and domestic, is your shield. When you approach a military checkpoint, you are not seen as a potential threat, but as a lady, likely on her way to visit a sick aunt. You learn to play this part to perfection. You adopt a slightly vacant, fluttery demeanor. You might ask a guard for directions in a way that makes you seem utterly lost and helpless. The more you lean into the stereotype of the fragile, clueless female, the more invisible your true purpose becomes. It's a bit of a cliche, really. Playing dumb might be a terrible strategy for modern life, but in the 1860s, it's a world-class espionage technique. Every accessory you carry is another potential tool. Your parasol, ostensibly for protecting your delicate skin from the sun, might have a hollowed-out handle perfect for concealing a tightly rolled dispatch. The large, plush fur muff you carry in winter is not just for warmth. It's an ideal spot to hide a small firearm or a packet of letters, your hand resting on them casually at all times. Even your hat pins, long, sharp, and decorative, could be used to discreetly puncture a hidden pouch in the lining of a carriage to drop off a message. This is the quirky brilliance of your disguise. Everything you carry has a legitimate feminine purpose, making its secondary secret purpose almost impossible to detect. Historians and writers still grapple with how to portray these women. Were they master manipulators cleverly weaponizing their femininity? Or were they simply using the only tools society had ever given them to survive and make a difference? Perhaps the truth is that it was both. You learn to use flirtation as a scalpel, extracting information with a well-timed smile or a carefully crafted compliment. An officer, puffed up with his own importance, might let slip a crucial detail about troop movements while trying to impress the charming young lady who seems so captivated by his stories. You learn to feign a swoon if a guard at a checkpoint becomes too inquisitive. The sheer theatrical impropriety of a gentleman causing a lady to faint was often enough to make him back down immediately and wave you through with a flustered apology. As you sit in a rattling train car or a bumpy carriage, surrounded by soldiers who see you as little more than a piece of scenery, you feel the weight of your secrets. They are literally sewn into the fabric of your clothes, tucked into the accessories you carry, and hidden behind the placid, polite expression you have perfected. Your greatest defense is the collective imagination of the men around you. They simply cannot conceive that a woman, a creature of the domestic sphere, could be a player in the deadly game of war. You are a ghost, hiding in plain sight, your rustling skirts and charming smile the perfect cover for the cold, calculating mind of a spy. You are on your way, and your mission is about to begin. Let's pull our focus from the general to the specific. It's time to give the anonymous you a name, a face, and a home. For the next while, you are Elizabeth Van Loo. Your home is a stately brick mansion on Church Hill in Richmond, Virginia. And the year is 1861. The problem is that Richmond has just been named the capital of the Confederacy. You are a staunch, unwavering Unionist living in the very heart of the enemy. Every person you have ever known, your neighbors, your friends, the merchants you buy from, is celebrating the new nation you are secretly working to destroy. It's a profoundly lonely and dangerous position. Committing to a crazy persona is a bold move, sure, but it's certainly more effective than simply hoping no one notices you're not cheering for the right team. You come from a wealthy, respected slave-owning family, the pinnacle of Richmond society. But your views are anything but conventional. Educated in Philadelphia, you returned home an ardent abolitionist. When your father died, you and your mother freed the family's slaves, long before the war made it a mandate. This act alone has already marked you as an eccentric, a woman with peculiar northern-bred ideas. You are about to lean into that reputation and turn it into your greatest weapon. As the city around you drapes itself in the stars and bars, you begin to cultivate your persona. You become crazy bad. You let your appearance become just a little disheveled. You take to wandering the streets of Richmond, singing softly to yourself and muttering nonsense under your breath. Your gaze is distant, your smile a little too vacant. To the busy Confederate officials and officers who pass you on the street, you are a harmless spinster, an object of pity or mild amusement, her mind clearly affected by the stresses of the time. They dismiss you completely. And that is exactly what you want. Your supposed madness is a cloak of invisibility, far more effective than any fashionable parasol. In an era where everyone is watching everyone else for signs of disloyalty, no one pays any attention to the crazy lady. Your mansion becomes the headquarters of what will be known as the Richmond Underground, one of the most effective spy rings of the entire war. Your main source of intelligence is Libby Prison, a notoriously grim warehouse-turned-prison for captured Union officers. Using your social standing and a carefully crafted story about Christian charity, you gain permission to visit the prisoners. You arrive with baskets of food, warm clothes, and books. You are the very picture of a pious Southern lady tending to the unfortunate. But as you offer a prisoner a piece of bread, your fingers brush his, passing him a tiny folded note. As you lean in to comfort him, you listen as he whispers information about the Confederate Army he observed before his capture. The things you bring are never just what they seem. That copy of a novel you're donating to the prison library? It's the key to a book cipher you've established with a high-ranking inmate. That basket of vegetables from your garden contains a hollowed-out turnip, and nestled inside is a message written in your invisible, milk-based ink. It's the 19th century equivalent of a thumb drive, but with substantially more vitamins. You collect the prisoner's intelligence, memorize it, and then encode it for your couriers. You also use these visits to identify men who are good candidates for escape, and your network helps smuggle them out of the city and back to Union lines. You are not working alone. You are the spymaster. You recruit other Unionists in the city, a clerk in the Confederate War Department, a local hardware store owner, and others who share your secret loyalty. But your most valuable asset is someone you placed inside the Confederate White House itself, in the home of President Jefferson Davis. We will talk more about her soon. Managing this network is a constant, nerve-wracking dance. Historians still debate the precise value of the intelligence Van Lew provided. While some of it was battlefield critical, much of it was likely high-level political gossip whose direct military impact is hard to measure. Still, generals like Ulysses S. Grant would later say that the information that came out of your spy ring was some of the most valuable they received. As you walk back home from Libby Prison, the setting sun casting long shadows across the cobblestones, you drop the crazy bet persona for a moment. You are just a woman, alone, carrying secrets that could win or lose a war, surrounded by a city that would hang you if they ever found out. Your identity shifts again. You are no longer the eccentric spymaster Crazy Bet, orchestrating from a distance. You are now her most valuable asset, the agent on the inside. You are the woman Elizabeth Van Lew placed in the nerve center of the Confederacy. Your name is Mary Bowser, and your memory is a weapon. Your story is deeply intertwined with Elizabeth's. You were born into slavery in the Van Lew household. But Elizabeth, with her fierce abolitionist principles, saw not property, but a person. She arranged for you to be freed, and in an act that was both illegal and radical for the time, sent you north to Philadelphia to be educated. This education is your foundation. It gives you the ability to read, to write, and to understand the immense significance of the documents you will soon encounter. When the war breaks out, you don't hesitate. You return to Richmond, ready to play your part in the intricate plan you and Elizabeth have devised. The plan is breathtakingly audacious. You are going to get a job as a servant in the Confederate White House, the official residence of President Jefferson Davis and his wife, Verena. It's the equivalent of walking into the lion's den, but you and Elizabeth know you have the perfect cover. In this house, you are not seen. You are a ghost of a different sort. The powerful white men who run the Confederacy see you as part of the furniture, a pair of hands to clear the table or pour the wine. Their racism is their Achilles' heel. They assume you are illiterate, unintelligent, and uninterested in their world. And so they talk. They leave maps on their desks. They toss sensitive military dispatches onto side tables. Their operational security is, to put it mildly, atrocious. The 19th century equivalent of writing all your passwords on a note and sticking it to your monitor. You are quiet, efficient, and you play your part with masterful skill. You adopt a slow, slightly dull-witted persona, fumbling occasionally to reinforce their prejudice. This act allows you to linger in a room pretending to be dusting the same spot twice, giving your eyes a few precious extra seconds to scan a document on the president's desk. And this is where your extraordinary gift comes into play. You have what is often called a photographic or eidetic memory. You cannot risk stealing the papers, so you steal the words instead. As you polish a silver tray, your eyes move over a letter detailing Confederate troop movements. You don't just get the gist of it, you absorb the entire text, the date, the signature, the official seal. You capture a perfect mental snapshot. It's an incredible skill, though it's probably a bit of a curse when all you want to do is forget a particularly terrible joke someone told at dinner. The information you collect is priceless. You memorize the guest list for state dinners, noting which generals and politicians are meeting in secret. You overhear conversations about supply shortages, battlefield losses, and strategic plans. At night in your small servants' quarters, you meticulously replay the day's findings in your mind, ensuring every detail is locked in place. The story of Mary Bowser is one of the most compelling of the war, but historians face a profound challenge. Almost all official records of her work were destroyed by the Union government after the war to protect her and her network from reprisal. Therefore, scholars still fiercely debate the specific details of her missions and the full extent of her contribution, piecing it together from diaries, letters, and secondhand accounts. Getting the information out is a delicate dance. You can't just walk over to the Van Loo mansion for a chat. Instead, you use the established network. Your contact might be another servant or a grocer at the market. A prearranged signal, a flower pot moved on a windowsill, a certain way of hanging laundry on a line tells you when it's safe. You meet your contact, perhaps Elizabeth herself in her crazy bet disguise, and while appearing to inspect melons at a market stall, you quietly recite the contents of the documents you have memorized, word for perfect word. The information then travels through the Richmond underground, eventually reaching the desk of Union generals. You live with the constant, crushing fear of discovery. A single slip-up, a moment of recognition in your eyes as you read a document, would mean a swift and brutal end. But every day you walk through the halls of power, a silent, invisible witness, your mind a secret archive of the Confederacy's deepest secrets. Section 7. We've stood in time now with the Union's quiet operatives, hiding in the shadows of the Confederate capital. Let's cross the battle lines. Let's travel north into the bustling, paranoid, and mud-splattered heart of the Union war effort. Washington, D.C. The game of espionage is being played here too, but with a very different style. For this section, your identity shifts once more. You are no longer a quiet servant or an eccentric spinster. You are a queen in your own right. Your name is Rose O'Neal Greenhow. You are a prominent Washington socialite, a well-connected widow known for your charm, intelligence, and fiercely pro-Southern sympathies. Your home, just a block from the White House, is one of the city's most influential salons. Before the war, it was a place where senators, military officers, and diplomats from both North and South mingled, debated, and gossiped. Now, with the nation split in two, your guest list is a bit more curated, but your home remains an essential hub of political life. Unlike Elizabeth Van Loo, who cloaked herself in madness, or Mary Bowser, who wore the invisibility of her race and station, you operate in the full glare of the public eye. Your power comes not from being underestimated, but from being utterly, dazzlingly, unmissably present. Your methods are as different from theirs as champagne is from ditch water. You don't need to hide messages in turnips. You invite the man with the secrets to dinner. You don't feign ignorance. You engage in witty, probing conversations, gently steering powerful men toward the topics you are interested in. Your drawing room, aglow with gaslight and filled with the scent of hothouse flowers, is your battlefield. A handsome Union general, flattered by your attention, might let slip a detail about his regiment's low morale. A senator, loosened by a third glass of sherry, might complain about a planned troop movement he considers foolish. You listen to it all, a gracious and captivating hostess, all the while filing away every crumb of information. The parties you throw have a much better signal-to-noise ratio for intelligence than any modern political talk show. Your most famous moment comes early in the war, in the summer of 1861. The Union is preparing its first major offensive, a confident march to crush the rebellion in a single blow. Through your close relationship with a Massachusetts senator, you learn the Union Army's entire battle plan, their route, their numbers, their timetable. You immediately write a coded message, conceal it in the hair bun of a female courier, and dispatch her south. Your message reaches Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard just in time. Forewarned, the Confederates are able to reinforce their positions and prepare. The resulting battle, the First Battle of Bull Run, is a shocking and humiliating defeat for the Union. You, a civilian woman operating out of her parlor, have managed to change the course of a major battle. You are now a hero to the Confederacy, and you've also just become a primary target for the Union's newly formed Secret Service. Your approach is anything but subtle. Your personal motto might as well be, "Go big or go to prison." Alan Pinkerton, the head of Union intelligence, quickly places you under surveillance. But even when you are arrested and placed under house arrest in your own home, you continue your work. You smuggle messages out in 100 ingenious ways. You use your young daughter, also named Rose, as a courier, coaching her to carry notes to sympathizers she meets on her walks. You write tiny messages on scraps of silk and stuff them into the center of a ball of yarn, which a visitor then carries out. You are defiant, proud, and completely unapologetic. Historians often debate whether Rose Greenhow was a truly brilliant spymaster or more of a charismatic but reckless patriot whose high-profile actions ultimately did more to alert the Union to the threat of female spies than to help the Confederacy in the long run. Her celebrity as a spy made her a legend, but it also made her an easy target. She lacked the quiet, meticulous discipline of someone like Van Lew. But her courage was undeniable. As you sit in your beautifully appointed home, now your prison, with a Union guard posted outside your door, you are unbowed. You have used your social standing, your charm, and your fierce political convictions as weapons, and you have struck a powerful blow for your cause, right under the nose of the enemy government. Let's leave the gilded cage of Rose Greenhow's Washington townhouse and travel to a place where the war is not a subject of whispered political debate, but a constant, rumbling presence on the horizon. We are heading to the Shenandoah Valley, a lush, beautiful landscape that has become a key battleground. Here, espionage is less about elegant parties and more about quick wits and daring risks. Your identity shifts once more. You are no longer a polished socialite. You are a teenager with a rebellious streak and a cause. For this section, you are Belle Boyd. When the war begins, you are just 17 years old, living in your family's hotel in Martinsburg, Virginia. You are spirited, impulsive, and a daughter of the South down to your bones. Your career in espionage doesn't begin with a quiet decision in a darkened room, but with a literal bang. In July of 1861, a group of drunk and disorderly Union soldiers breaks into your home, intending to raise a Union flag on your roof. When one of the soldiers insults your mother, your famous temper ignites. You draw a pistol you have hidden in the folds of your dress and, without a second's hesitation, you shoot the man. It's a shocking act. And while you are officially cleared of any crime, a military tribunal rules it was justifiable, the incident makes you an instant local legend. It also marks you as a woman to be watched. Your response to being insulted, while effective, is a slight escalation from the modern technique of just leaving a bad review on Yelp. Unlike the spies we've met so far, you are not a spymaster or a deep cover agent. You are a courier and an informant operating on the front lines. Your youth and gender are your primary assets. You flirt shamelessly with the Union officers who are quartered in your town, charming them into revealing details about their plans, their numbers, and their morale. They see a pretty, vivacious young girl and let their guard down, never imagining that every word they say is being carefully noted. You then undertake dangerous rides on horseback, often at night, to carry this information to the nearest Confederate commander. Your most famous beneficiary is the legendary General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, who comes to rely on the intelligence you provide. Your most celebrated exploit is the stuff of pure adventure. It takes place in Front Royal, Virginia, where you are staying with relatives. Union officers commandeer the local hotel for a council of war. Realizing what is happening, you sneak into a small closet in the room directly above their meeting. There you find a knothole in the floorboards. You spend hours pressed against the rough wood, listening to every detail of their strategy. Their plans to retreat, destroy the bridges, and consolidate their forces. It is essentially the 19th century version of hacking into a private Zoom meeting. Once the meeting adjourns, you know you have to get this information to the Confederates immediately. You steal a horse and ride out of town, then make your way on foot at night across the open fields that lie between the two armies. You run blindly through the darkness with cannon and rifle fire erupting around you, waving your bonnet so the Confederate pickets won't mistake you for an enemy scout. You finally reach an officer and, breathless, deliver your intelligence. The information allows Stonewall Jackson's forces to adjust their attack, leading to a decisive Confederate victory. Because of exploits like this, you become a celebrity, nicknamed the Cleopatra of the Secession by the press. You are arrested multiple times, imprisoned, and even exiled, but you always find a way back into the action. However, historians, working from your own sensational memoirs published after the war, often debate how much of Belle Boyd's story is embellished truth versus outright fabrication. Was she the crucial informant who repeatedly turned the tide in the Shenandoah Valley, or more of a brave but minor operative whose legend, polished by her own considerable talent for self-promotion, grew larger than her actual deeds? Her post-war career as a successful stage actress certainly suggests she knew a thing or two about captivating an audience. Regardless, your story illustrates a different kind of female spy, one driven by youthful audacity, a love of adventure, and a fearless devotion to her cause, right in the thick of the fight. We've now met the players in this quiet war of secrets. We've seen the calculated madness of Elizabeth Van Lew, the silent witness of Mary Bowser, the dazzling defiance of Rose Greenhow, and the reckless audacity of Belle Boyd. But a spy, no matter how brilliant, is only a single point of light in the darkness. To be effective, they must be part of a network. The crucial question is, how did information actually travel? How did a secret, whispered in the Confederate White House, find its way to a Union general's tent miles away? The answer lies in a slow, patient, and wonderfully mundane system of communication. First, you must understand the agonizing slowness of it all. In an age before telephone, radio, or even a reliable telegraph system for civilians, information moved at the speed of a horse, a train, or a person's own 2 feet. The intelligence you risk your life to gather today might not reach its destination for a week or more. By then, the troop movements you reported could be old news, the opportunity lost. This is not a world of instant gratification. It's a world of immense, nerve-wracking patience. The anxiety of waiting for a courier to return safely is 100 times worse than watching those 3 little dots appear and disappear in a modern text message. The foundation of your network is the courier. These are the trusted individuals who physically carry the messages from one point to another. But you can't have your top agents meeting in person all the time. It's far too risky. This is where you use a dead drop. A dead drop is a secret hiding place where one agent can leave a message for another to pick up later. It's the 19th century version of cloud storage, just much more susceptible to squirrels. You might designate a specific hollow in an old oak tree, a loose brick in a churchyard wall, or even a particular hymn book in a church pew. The goal is to pass information without ever needing to be in the same place at the same time. But what if you just need to send a simple, urgent signal? You can't wait for a courier just to say the coast is clear. This is where the genius of domestic spycraft truly shines, with what's often called the clothesline code. Imagine you are expecting a courier to arrive with a sensitive dispatch. It's your job to let him know if it's safe to approach. You do this by hanging your laundry out to dry. To an ordinary passerby, it's just a line of damp clothes fluttering in the breeze. But to your courier, the arrangement is a clear message. A black petticoat hung on the far left might mean danger, stay away. A pair of white stockings hung next to each other could signal, all clear, approach after dark. It's a silent public broadcast, hidden in the most mundane of female chores. You just have to be very careful that you don't accidentally signal a general retreat when you're just trying a new sorting method. While stories of clothesline codes are popular and compelling, some historians question their practicality for conveying complex information, suggesting they were likely used for simple signals, all clear or danger, rather than detailed messages, which still relied on the riskier method of written couriers. These simple signals, however, were vital. A certain book left on a parlor windowsill, a flower pot moved from the right side of the porch to the left, a candle lit in an upstairs window at precisely 9 o'clock. These were the quiet whispers that kept the network running. They were all part of a secret language written on the landscape of everyday life. When a physical message did need to be sent, it was concealed with all the ingenuity we've discussed. It might be a tiny pellet of paper baked into a loaf of bread, which the receiving agent would have to carefully crumble apart. It might be sewn into the buttons of a coat or tucked into the hollowed-out heel of a boot. You learn to look at every object not for what it is, but for what it could contain. This slow, methodical web of signals, drops, and couriers is what connects you to the wider war effort. It is a network built on trust, patience, and the shared understanding of a secret language. A language spoken not with words, but with laundry and bread and misplaced flower pots. Section 10. The signal has been sent, perhaps with a petticoat on a clothesline. The courier is on their way, the message baked into a scone. But now comes the most difficult part of your job. It isn't the daring ride or the secret ink, it's the waiting. It's the slow, quiet hours and days that follow, where all you can do is maintain your cover and pretend that nothing is wrong. This is the immense, unseen psychological weight of living a double life. You are sitting in a parlor with a group of other ladies engaged in a sewing circle. The afternoon sun streams through the lace curtains, illuminating the fine dust motes dancing in the air. The conversation is a gentle murmur of local gossip, complaints about wartime shortages, and news from sons or husbands at the front. You smile, you nod, you offer a sympathetic word, you take another sip of lukewarm tea. But inside, your mind is a hornet's nest of anxiety. The woman sitting across from you, laughing about a social faux pas, is the wife of a Confederate colonel. Last night, you sent a message detailing the location of his regiment. You are smiling at a woman whose husband you may have just condemned. The sheer effort of keeping your expression placid while your stomach is churning with guilt and fear is exhausting. It's like accidentally hitting reply all on the most catastrophic email imaginable, and then having to sit in the same room with everyone who received it for the rest of the day, pretending you have no idea what they're whispering about. Every interaction is a performance. You are never off stage. In a city at war, suspicion is the air you breathe. A slip of the tongue, a misplaced word, a glance held a second too long, any of these things could unravel your entire existence. The war has a way of turning communities against themselves, dividing neighbors and even families. The man you exchange pleasantries with at the post office might be the very person who would report you if he knew your true loyalties. This constant vigilance wears you down. You develop a kind of second sight, an intense sensitivity to the moods and reactions of those around you, always scanning for a flicker of doubt in their eyes. The fear is a physical presence, a cold knot that lives permanently in your gut. It's the sudden, heart-stopping jolt when there's an unexpected knock at your door late at night. It's the cold sweat that prickles your skin when a guard at a checkpoint asks you a question you weren't prepared for. Your ears become attuned to the sound of heavy boots on a wooden porch. Every approaching stranger is a potential threat. You learn to sleep lightly, if at all, your mind always rehearsing your alibi, your cover story, the lies you will tell if you are discovered. To survive, you learn to compartmentalize. The you who attends church and worries about the price of flour is one person. The you who decodes messages by candlelight is someone else entirely. You also learn to use the secrets of others as a shield, a practice sometimes called gray mail. You might learn through your network that a certain Confederate supply officer is skimming from the top. You don't expose him. Instead, you use that knowledge to ensure he doesn't look too closely when one of your agents needs to pass through his checkpoint. It's a dirty, morally complex part of the job that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. Psychological historians still debate the long-term effects of this constant deception on the spies themselves. Did they suffer from what we might now recognize as PTSD? Or did a sense of patriotic duty provide a powerful coping mechanism that shielded them from the trauma? It's impossible to know for sure. What is certain is that the strain was immense. You are utterly isolated. You are surrounded by people, friends, neighbors, family, but you cannot confide in any of them. Your only allies are the other ghosts in your network, people you may only know by a code name. The quiet life of a female spy is not just quiet in its methods. It is a life of profound, bone-deep loneliness. One way to manage the crushing anxiety, to quiet the frantic drumbeat of fear in your own mind, is to retreat into the work itself. You find a strange, calming solace in the meticulous intellectual puzzle of spycraft. You focus on the quiet, mathematical art of the cipher. In a world of chaotic emotions and unpredictable dangers, the logic of a secret code is a comfort. It's a small piece of the universe that you can, with enough care and patience, control completely. So, you sit at your writing desk late at night, long after the rest of the house has gone to sleep. The only sounds are the gentle tick of a mantle clock and the soft hiss of the gas lamp. Your task is to transform a dangerous truth into a harmless fiction. You are learning the hidden languages of the war. We've mentioned the simple book cipher, but the art goes much deeper. For truly sensitive information, you might use what was then considered the master of all ciphers, the Vigenère cipher. It was famously called the indecipherable cipher, and trying to crack it without the secret keyword is the 19th century equivalent of trying to guess a password that's a random string of 40 letters, numbers, and symbols. The concept is surprisingly simple. You and your contact agree on a keyword, let's say liberty. You then write this word over and over again above your plain text message. Each letter of the keyword tells you how many places to shift the letter beneath it in the alphabet. So the first letter of your message is shifted by L, the second by I, the third by B, and so on. Unlike a simple cipher where A always becomes, say, G, here the letter A might become an L in one spot, a J in another, and a C in a third. The pattern is complex and maddeningly difficult to spot. You have a small chart, a Vigenère square, that you use to painstakingly encode your message, one letter at a time. It's slow, methodical work, and you lose yourself in the quiet logic of it. An even more visually clever method is the mask cipher, or grill. You take a piece of stiff cardstock and cut out a series of small windows or holes in a specific pattern. You then make a perfect copy of this mask and send it to your contact via a trusted courier. This mask is now your key. To write a message, you lay the mask over a fresh sheet of paper and write your secret information in the empty spaces. Then you remove the mask. You are left with a pile containing a scattering of seemingly random words. Your job is now to fill in the gaps, composing a perfectly ordinary, boring letter around them. The result is a letter that reads as a harmless note to a cousin, but when your contact receives it and lays their identical mask on top, the fluff melts away, and only your true words are visible. It's a brilliant method, though you do have to be careful not to accidentally write something like "attack at dawn" next to your request for Aunt Mildred's scone recipe. Cryptographic historians often point out that while complex ciphers like the Vigenère were available, the vast majority of Civil War espionage relied on much simpler methods. The debate, therefore, is whether the limiting factor was the agent's training or simply the practical need for speed and simplicity in the field, where a complex code could be a dangerous liability. Often, the simplest tricks were the best. You might write a message in invisible ink between the lines of a regular letter, or you could rely on coded phrases hidden in plain sight. A letter about family matters could be a hidden report, where Aunt Sally's health is improving might mean our supply lines are secure, and a comment about father's troublesome cough could indicate that the commanding general is unwell. This is the secret world you now inhabit. It is a world of double meanings, of hidden patterns, and of languages that look like one thing, but are in fact something else entirely. As you finish your work, carefully folding the letter that looks like a letter but isn't, you feel a sense of calm. The fear is still there, waiting for you outside the small circle of your lamplight, but for a few hours you have kept it at bay with the quiet power of ink, paper, and a secret alphabet of your own. But no matter how perfect your cipher, no matter how clever your cover, this is a dangerous game. And eventually you might make a mistake. A courier gets caught. A contact is turned. Or perhaps you simply get unlucky. The suspicion, when it comes, doesn't begin with a battering ram at your door. It begins as a quiet shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change in the way the world treats you. It begins with the gentle art of interrogation. The first sign is a coolness you can't quite put your finger on. An old friend who used to share every piece of society news with you suddenly becomes vague and distant. The questions she asks are a little too pointed, her gaze a little too sharp. You notice a man in a plain-looking coat on the corner every morning when you go to the market. He seems to be reading a newspaper, but his eyes are never on the page. It's the 19th century equivalent of seeing a targeted ad for something you've only ever thought about. It's a deeply unsettling feeling that someone, somewhere, knows more about you than they should. The interrogations themselves are not conducted in a cold, stark room. They happen in the most civilized of places. You are at a dinner party in a union major. A man with deceptively kind eyes sits next to you. He engages you in what feels like pleasant conversation. He asks about your family, your sympathies, your recent travels. "I hear you were visiting your sister near Fairfax last week," he might say, casually swirling the wine in his glass. "Did you have any trouble on the roads? I heard they were quite congested with our supply wagons." Every question is a test. He is checking your story, looking for a hesitation, a flicker of panic in your eyes. Maintaining your composure, delivering a breezy and believable answer while your heart is hammering against your ribs, is the performance of a lifetime. And it completely ruins the taste of the dessert course. This is the work of professionals. Early in the war, the Union effort to catch spies was disorganized. But soon it was taken over by Alan Pinkerton, a Scottish immigrant who had founded America's most famous private detective agency. Pinkerton's men were not soldiers, they were detectives, trained in the arts of surveillance and interrogation. When they suspected someone like Rose O'Neal Greenhow, they didn't just arrest her. They watched her for weeks, tracking her visitors, intercepting her mail, and building a web of evidence around her. They were patient, methodical, and very, very good at their jobs. As the net tightens, social pressure becomes a powerful weapon. Invitations to the best parties suddenly stop arriving. When you enter a room, conversations drop to a whisper. Friends who once greeted you warmly now nod stiffly and walk away. You are being quietly, systematically isolated. This isn't just socially painful, it's devastating to your work. The very social circles you use for gathering intelligence are now closed to you. You are being squeezed, slowly and deliberately. Sometimes the psychological games are more direct. In a quiet, one-on-one conversation, an investigator might employ a devastating tactic. He might lean in and tell you that one of your own couriers has been captured and is now cooperating. He might describe the courier perfectly. It might even be true. Or it might be a complete fabrication. It doesn't matter. The seed of doubt has been planted. You return home and look at every member of your network with a fresh wave of suspicion. Who can you trust? Is your most loyal agent now a double agent? The paranoia is crippling. Historians of intelligence still debate whether these social pressures and gentle interrogations were more effective at shutting down spy rings than formal arrests. Did the fear and paranoia they generated cause agents to simply cease their activities? A quiet victory for counterintelligence that would leave no historical record? It is a chillingly effective strategy. As you lie awake at night, going over every conversation, every interaction, you feel the walls closing in. The game has changed. You are no longer the hunter. You are the hunted. And then the hunt is over. The knock on the door finally comes. It isn't loud or violent. It's a polite, firm rapping that seems to echo in the sudden, dead silence of your home. You open it to find two men in plain dark suits. Their hats are in their hands. They are deeply, unnervingly polite as they inform you that you are under arrest. There is no struggle. You are escorted quietly into a waiting carriage, the faces of your neighbors flickering like ghosts behind their lace curtains. The gentle interrogation is over, and your new life as a prisoner of war is about to begin. You are taken not to a purpose-built fortress, but to a makeshift prison, one of the many repurposed buildings that now dot the landscape of the war. It might be a converted tobacco warehouse, a seized hotel, or in many cases, a former government building. The air inside is thick with the smell of damp straw, boiled cabbage, and too many people living in too small a space. You are given a thin blanket and a spot on the floor or a rickety cot in a large, open room shared with a dozen other women, other spies, smugglers, and political prisoners. The boredom is as much a punishment as the confinement. The days are a long, slow march of nothingness. But a mind accustomed to plotting does not simply go idle. After the initial shock wears off, you begin to do what you do best. You observe. You learn the guards' routines. You note which one is lazy, which one is cruel, which one drinks on duty. You watch, you listen, and you begin to formulate a plan. You are not content to wait for a prisoner exchange that may never come. You decide that you are going to escape. Your first task is to make a rope. This is a slow, painstaking process. You and a few trusted cellmates begin to tear your bedding, your petticoats, even the hems of your dresses into long, thin strips. At night in the dark, you work silently, braiding these strips together, knotting them tightly, your fingers growing raw from the work. It's a skill you might have used to braid a daughter's hair, now repurposed for your own liberation. Day by day, week by week, the rope grows longer, a thick, lumpy serpent of fabric that you hide in a mattress or under a loose floorboard. This is a skill, you reflect, that is finally more useful than your ability to embroider a perfect rose on a pillowcase. Next, you need a contact on the outside and a friend on the inside. Through a visitor, a minister, perhaps, or a relative of another inmate, you smuggle out a coded message to your network. The message identifies the weak link you've spotted in the guards. A young man who complains constantly about his low pay and his family's struggles. The message asks your network to deliver a substantial sum of money to his wife, framing it as a charitable gift from an anonymous benefactor. It's a complicated transaction, far more difficult than if you could just Venmo him the bribe. A week later, you see the guard and his expression is different. He avoids your gaze, but you see a new tension in his shoulders. The hook has been set. Historians often debate the prevalence of such dramatic escapes. While a few well-documented cases exist, it's likely that for every successful escape, hundreds of female prisoners simply served their sentences or were eventually exchanged, their quiet endurance a less celebrated but far more common form of wartime resilience. But tonight, you are not the rule. You are the exception. The night of the escape is cold and moonless. The bribe guard is on duty. At the prearranged time, you hear the faint, scraping sound of your cell door being unlocked. You and your fellow escapees slip out into the darkened hallway. The guard is nowhere to be seen. He has done his part. You move silently to a designated window at the back of the building. You tie your makeshift rope to an iron bed frame, your heart pounding a deafening rhythm in your ears. One by one, you slip out the window and begin the terrifying descent, the rough, knotted fabric digging into your hands. You land silently in a muddy alleyway, and a dark shape detaches itself from the shadows. It is your contact, with a change of clothes and a carriage waiting just around the corner. You melt into the night, a ghost once more, leaving only a braided rope of petticoats swaying gently from a prison window. Your escape was a success. You slipped back into the shadows and continued your work until the very end. But eventually, all the battles, all the secret messages, and all the daring escapes come to a close. The guns fall silent. The treaties are signed. The war is over. And now you face a new and in some ways more bewildering challenge: peace. You are expected to go home. After years of living a life of high stakes, purpose, and secret agency, you are now supposed to step back into the very domestic sphere you turned into your weapon. The corset, which you once saw as a cage and then as a tool of deception, is now just a corset again. The conversations around you are no longer about troop movements and political intrigue, but about rebuilding, reconciliation, and the proper way to stitch a quilt. It is a jarring, disorienting return. How can you get excited about the upcoming county fair when you still have dreams about decoding ciphers by candlelight? It's a classic case of how you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen the front lines. The men who fought come home to parades, medals, and pensions. They are heroes and their service is publicly celebrated. For you, there is only silence. Your work, by its very nature, was secret. And in the post-war era, as the nation tries to bind its wounds, the shadowy, morally ambiguous work of espionage is something most people want to forget. Your service was considered unladylike, an unbecoming deviation from your natural role. You are not given a pension. You are not given a medal. You are given an unspoken collective instruction to go back to your kitchen and forget it ever happened. You see this play out in the lives of the women you knew or heard about during the war. Rose O'Neal Greenhow, the dazzling Confederate socialite, met a dramatic end even before the war was over. Sailing home from a diplomatic mission in Europe, her blockade runner was chased by a Union ship. Her lifeboat capsized in a storm, and she drowned, weighed down by a bag of gold sovereigns she was carrying for the Confederacy. Her life was as sensational as her death. Elizabeth Van Lew, the Union's spymaster in Richmond, fares little better in peace. She is utterly ostracized by her fellow Richmonders, who see her as nothing but a traitor to her city and her class. President Grant, remembering her service, appoints her postmaster of Richmond, but she is eventually pushed out of the position. She dies in poverty and obscurity, a hero to the Union, but an outcast in her own home. Belle Boyd, the Cleopatra of the secession, is the rare exception. Ever the performer, she leans into her fame. She marries a Union officer who had once been her captor, moves to England, writes a wildly successful and likely exaggerated memoir, and becomes a stage actress. She manages to convert her wartime celebrity into a career. Mary Bowser, the silent witness in the Confederate White House, simply vanishes. She dedicates some time after the war to teaching newly freed slaves, but then she disappears from the historical record, likely changing her name to protect herself and live a quiet life. She melts back into the shadows from whence she came. Historians continue to debate the reasons for this collective amnesia. Was it a deliberate effort by a patriarchal society to push women back into a domestic role? Or was it a side effect of the secrecy of their work, combined with a national desire to heal and forget the more sordid aspects of the war? In truth, it was likely both. There were a few token gestures. A handful of women like Union spy Pauline Cushman were given honorary military ranks, titles that came with no pay or authority, but allowed them to be called major for the rest of their lives. It was a hollow acknowledgement of a debt that could never be truly repaid. You and so many like you are left with only your memories. You fade back into the woodwork of American life, a secret keeper to the very end. Your extraordinary story, a quiet, unwritten footnote in the grand history of the war. And so, you fade. Your story, and hundreds like it, becomes a ghost, a whisper in the grand, noisy epic of the Civil War. You retreat back into the role society assigned you, and the history books, when they are written, barely mention you are there at all. For over a century, the quiet, hidden lives of these female spies remain just that, hidden. But why? Why were these women who risked everything and in some cases changed the course of battles so thoroughly forgotten? The most straightforward reason is the very nature of the work. It was secret. Good spies, then as now, do not leave a paper trail. After the war, both the Union and Confederate governments deliberately destroyed many of their intelligence records. This wasn't necessarily to erase the women from history. It was to protect the agents and their networks from post-war reprisals. But the effect was the same. The evidence of your service was systematically wiped out. Destroying the evidence is an excellent final step for a spy, but a profound frustration for the historians who come later. There was also the simple fact that your story didn't fit the preferred narrative. The 19th century liked its history heroic and its heroes male. The popular story of the Civil War was one of brave generals, valiant soldiers, and noble statesmen. The messy, morally ambiguous world of espionage didn't fit this clean, epic tale. And the idea of gentlewomen engaging in deceit, treason, and subterfuge was deeply unsettling to the Victorian ideal of female purity. It was easier for everyone to pretend that you had spent the war where you were supposed to be, at home, knitting socks, and worrying. This is perfectly illustrated by the strange post-war life of Sarah Emma Edmonds. She was a woman who served in the Union Army for 2 years, disguised as a man named Franklin Thompson, working as a male field nurse, a courier, and, by her own account, a spy. After the war, she had to fight for years, gathering affidavits from her former comrades, just to prove she had been a soldier and to get her name cleared of desertion. She eventually won her case and was granted an honorable discharge and a veteran's pension, a testament to her incredible persistence. Her story shows just how thoroughly a woman's contribution could be erased, even when she had literally worn the uniform. Modern historians who study these women often engage in a debate known as reading against the grain. How do you write the history of people who were systematically written out of it? They have to piece together these lost lives from the faintest of clues. A cryptic line in a general's diary, an unexplained payment in an old intelligence budget, a second-hand account in a letter. They are historical detectives reconstructing a secret world from its faintest echoes. They are proving that you were there all along. Your legacy, then, is as quiet and complicated as your life was. You were not a general or a politician. You were a woman who took the confining rules of your world and turned them into a kind of superpower. You proved that courage was not just a masculine virtue, and that a war could be influenced just as much by a whisper in a drawing room as by a cannonade on a battlefield. You were playing the game of history on the highest difficulty setting, all while navigating the unique challenges of a tightly laced corset. Your story is a quiet reminder that the most important histories are often the ones that were never meant to be told. And so, our journey through the shadows, through the parlors and prisons of the Civil War, comes to a soft and quiet close. The stories have all been told, and the secrets can finally rest. Let the images of crazy Bette's defiant eccentricity, the dazzling risks of O'Neal Greenhow, the audacious spirit of Belle Boyd, and the quiet, profound courage of Mary Bowser all begin to soften now, dissolving like milk ink in the warmth of a gentle flame. Their watch is long over. There are no more codes to decipher tonight, no more couriers to wait for, no more whispers to strain to hear above the sound of your own beating heart. All of that tension can ease away now, replaced by a deep and well-earned sense of peace. The world of the past can fade, leaving only the comfortable, quiet darkness of your own room. There is nothing left for you to do now, nothing at all, but to let the gentle pull of sleep guide you toward your own peaceful dreams.